What's up, everyone, and welcome to Scourge of War, Waterloo, episode 17. I know it's been a couple of weeks now since I did the last episode, and I am sorry about that. It's not my intention to let that kind of time go by between videos. Sometimes, time just flies by. Some of it's laziness, some of it is just being caught up in other things. Of course, last weekend was the Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather fight, and I was kind of caught up in the hype of that beforehand and so forth. So yeah, just sometimes time escapes me. In this episode, we are going to complete our little Plancenoit trilogy that started with episode 15's Forward 16th Brigade, continued through episode 16, The Young Guard, and now it will conclude with, if we get the video going here, it will conclude with episode 17, which will be Meet the Old Guard. Now, I honestly have not played this scenario in a long time. And when I was playing it, I was drawing a blank on how the scenario went down because I kept confusing it with episode 15's scenario, forward 16th Brigade, because in a lot of ways it's very similar. Even though you're playing a different brigade, it's still made up exactly the same way with the same amount of regiments and a cavalry and artillery battery attached to it. And you start off in basically the exact same position, and your objective is pretty much exactly the same as in episode 15. So. I hadn't played this one in a long time, so I really didn't remember it. In the beginning of the scenario, you'll see me stumble a little bit in terms of what it is I want to do because I honestly wasn't sure at first what I wanted to do because I was just drawing a blank on the scenario and I just couldn't remember it. Um, yeah, I'm a little clumsy at first in what it is I want to do, but I do pull it together, and we do end up by the skin of our teeth beating it. Um, and Basically, it says so. This starts at 7:30 p.m. About an hour and a half after um, episode 15, the forward 16th Brigade scenario, which started at about 6 p.m. So in that time, the 16th Brigade was pushed out of Plancenoit by the Young Guard, which we covered in episode 16. So at this point, Plancenoit has changed hands between the French and the Prussians a couple of times now, and this is the last time. And we play the 14th Brigade of the same corps, the Fourth Corps, and the situation is the village of Plancenoit has been taken by the Prussians twice and the French twice. Currently, two battalions of the Old Guard hold the village, along with remnants of the Young Guard Division and the 19th Infantry Division, which is kind of that what is left of Lobau's Sixth Corps. And Of course, the Young Guard is what we captured Plancenoit with in episode 16, and they've been reinforced now by two battalions of the elite Old Guard. So our mission again is to take the village of Plancenoit and keep it. And Of course, the objective is the church again, as it was in the past two episodes. We have to capture the church. Now, if you remember in episode 15, which is again the old sorry, not the old guard, the forward 16th Brigade, where we the first one where we played the Prussians. We needed 1,000 points for a major victory, and if you recall, we were able to actually do that without even capturing the objective. We did capture the objective, but by the time we did, we already had like 1,200 points, enough for a major victory. So that was one of the few episodes or one of the few scenarios in this game that you can actually win without capturing the objective. You can win it just through casualties alone, and that was part of why I was getting confused at the beginning of this scenario because If you notice, there's a difference here. We need 1,500 points for a major victory. Um, and that's a little tougher to do just through casualties alone. If you remember in episode 16, the Young Guard, where you needed 2,000 points for a major victory, and that's impossible to do without capturing the objective. So you kind of want to capture the objective in this one too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously, here's the biography. We can, you can read that and whatnot. But like I said, I didn't quite remember how this scenario played out because I just hadn't played it in so long. So at the beginning, you're going to kind of see me searching around a little bit because it's very deceptive at the beginning. There's no French anywhere. There's like one battalion in the church, and at the beginning, you don't see anybody else. So I was a little confused as to is like I thought, is this going to be really easy? Do I just surround the church, capture it, and win? Um, you know, so I'm gonna basically scroll up here, and you can see it says the French are down to a couple of battalions in the village of Plancenoit. You are ordered to attack the village with your brigade. The 15th Brigade will be in support of you to your right. Elements of Hiller or Von Leto's brigades may also attack if they can get reformed. So basically, there's the church again. We're in basically the exact same position we start off in episode 15, deployed exactly the same way, with 3 regiments in one behind the other, all in column by division. And here I'm just looking around, and it's like these are the only French I see. Nowhere near the church. There's the church. You see some artillery back there on the hill, and once again, we're going to use our cavalry and go capture that because it's just easy points. To just go and capture those batteries. But all I see is a battalion in the church and nothing else. So I'm just like, okay, let's go. So I'm going to take the 1st Regiment. Remember, Prussian organizations are a little different. Even though it plays like a brigade, technically this is a regiment, and we have a regimental commander, and then 3 battalions make up the regiment. So this is technically called a brigade, the whole force we're playing with here, but it plays like a division as far as if it was a French organization. The Prussians just don't seem to use the division organization. It's just a bunch of brigades that actually make up a corps, and they're not organized in divisions. So again, just like in episode 15, I'm going to bring the guns up to contest the guns that the French have set up on the hill there. And I'm basically going to go and, advance in front of the church, very similar to what we did in episode 15. I don't see any French advancing on the other side of the river like in episode 15, so I really don't make any attempt to seriously block it because I just don't see anybody. And like I said, it's a little deceptive at the beginning here because there's no French on the field as far as I can see, except for the 1 battalion in the church, some scattered battalions off to the over in here that don't seem to be making much of an effort to do anything. And, much further back, you have some artillery that I know isn't going to move. So I'm thinking this is probably going to be pretty easy. And again, it's just because I was drawing a blank and hadn't remembered the scenario because it had actually been a long time since I played this particular one. And because I had just did forward 16th Brigade in episode 15, I kept thinking of that, because it's the same ground, we're attacking the same village and the same objective, and I just kept thinking it goes down like that, and it doesn't. Basically, there's some hidden French that I can't see at the moment that are going to come up this road here, and I wasn't really set up in the right way to meet them. So at first, I kind of get caught by it. But I didn't really overreact to it or anything. I just wanted to kind of let it develop and see what happened. And later on in the scenario, I kind of pull it together and kind of figure out what it is I want to do here. So the first thing I'm doing is just bringing the 1st Regiment up, and that's going to be my regiment to attack the church with. And the 2nd Regiment I'm going to set up in kind of just a typical double line formation, just kind of back behind what's going on in front of the church. And the 3rd Regiment, I don't think I even touch. I think they just end up sitting there, and I don't do anything with them. This is kind of a small area that you have to fight in, so it's actually kind of hard to bring, serious numbers of troops to bear, um, in kind of such a small area. So, yeah, the 2 regiments were kind of enough to get the job done. So I'm initially placing 1 regiment to fire. Remember what I said once, if you click on the sky, you can cancel a movement, and that's basically what I did here. I moved a unit I didn't want to move. So I ended up just clicking on the sky to cancel their movement. So I'm setting 1 regiment up in line to defend the bridge because I don't know what's going on, and I don't know if troops are going to come from that way. 1 regiment I'm going to set up in line to fire at the church here, and then I'm going to take another regiment and kind of set them up on the other corner of the church. And now I don't see these guys, but you can see, now I see them, coming up the road here, and on the other side are now some French units. And I think at this point I'm like taking note of them, that they're coming, and kind of now starting to rethink what I'm going to do here, because these guys aren't moving at all, so this must be the main thrust. So I'm going to take these guys and kind of put them in here, which ends up being a little too far forward. Really what you want to do is set up a line here, here, and then this line is fine. And basically this is where you want to be. And then put some skirmishers out in front. And eventually I do that, but here I'm just trying to remember how the heck the scenario goes down. And so I don't quite set up the way you should. If I were to have replayed the scenario and done it again, I would have obviously, done a lot better here. But, I still won the scenario. So, like I said, I don't necessarily always want to put up picture-perfect playthroughs of scenarios where, I make no mistakes and everything just, drops into my lap. Sometimes I want to show you guys, things don't always go your way, or you just, you do dumb things, and, how you can overcome them. So even though I stumbled a little bit at the beginning here, I just kept this playthrough because, we still won it, and I'm going to be able to explain what I did wrong so you guys don't need to make the same mistake. And the first thing that I did wrong is I have these guys a little too far forward. They're going to basically be getting fired on by the units in the church, as well as the units that are going to deploy over here, and they're just a little too far forward. They should be back around here. And what you really want to do is set up this line here, and basically from the bridge to over where this unit is, create a line, and then put some skirmishers in front, because I was going to just shoot at the church. I didn't realize the troops were going to be coming down the road, and they're now starting to spread out through this side of the village. So I'm going to send a skirmisher unit across the bridge to basically contest this little group right here, that even though they don't look like they're doing anything, I don't know what it is they're going to do. So as you can see, this regiment here, battalion, has already lost 70 men. This is not really a great spot. So I will, as soon as this skirmisher unit gets across the bridge, I think I start using a fallback while engaged, setting on these guys to try to bring them back over here. Really, I set these guys too far up forward. They should be about right here, and just send the skirmisher unit across to cover these guys. And these guys are in an okay spot. These guys are in an okay spot. And another mistake I make here is I want to stick some skirmishers kind of forward in between the house. And instead, they couldn't fit in there, so they ended up moving right in front of the church, and they got mauled, so I recalled them. Really, I should have just put them right here. You don't want to put a unit in here. They can't really fit. Even a 100-man skirmisher group, which is a relatively small unit, they can't fit in here. So you want to put them kind of right in front. So as you can see, they just move right through it and set up way too close to the church, and they kind of get shot to pieces. So yeah, now I'm taking this battalion. You see, I'm falling back while they're engaged. They've lost 125 men. You know, they're just getting mauled. You know, so I can see that is not the place for them. Really, I should have just forcefully retreated them, but it's only one battalion. I only have one regiment committed at this point. You know, nothing to really panic about, other than the fact that I'm losing points. Yeah, this is just a disaster. I just recall them. That didn't work. These guys are doing okay, though. They're relatively even, and they will end up eventually getting the better of it. But as long as they're just, you know, kind of even in a firefight, you know, the main goal here is to shoot this battalion out of the church. And really what I want to do is to get some points here. These guns are looking real tasty to this cavalry right now. And I'm just waiting for this cavalry to come up here so we can just gobble these batteries up. And yeah, I'm just moving them ever closer. And I'm not double clicking them, or I may do it at the end, but yeah, there we go. Okay. I just want to get them close enough. They're not getting shot at, really. They haven't taken any casualties, but really I just want to get this over with so I can get back to dealing with what's going on the church. You know, around the church. You know, but this is easy pickings for cavalry here. Just a battery out here undefended. And yeah, let's go. And this is pretty much a repeat of what I did in episode 15. The whole point of having this little cavalry squadron here is just to gobble up this artillery. And there they go, running them down. And, you know, the guns always seem to wait too long before withdrawing. You can't outrun cavalry that's charging you down like this. And there we go, little white flags, and the units will disappear. As I said, with cavalry, you don't capture the artillery and crew them. You just, they just surrender and then kind of vanish off, taken out of play. But the main reason we're doing this is just for points. As you can see, we've already got 200 points. And we just want to gather up the last of these guns here, get the last of these points, and then get out of here before the infantry over here forms square and starts picking us apart. I actually should have charged the infantry. They weren't in square, and I could have probably run them off. But I had already spent a whole bunch of effort on charging those guns, so I wanted to regroup my cavalry and kind of keep them in order. And these guys, in the meantime, these guys have just taken a pounding. They've lost 242 men and done virtually nothing. My skirmishers are doing great though over there. They have inflicted 31 casualties and only lost 2. And that's why I always love using skirmishers against line infantry. You just want to stand there and shoot, no problem, boys. So I'm going to start taking a few units from my from my second line there, the one I brought up behind the first regiment, and we'll start seeing if we can get some units firing on the church, because the church is the main goal, because that's the objective. And I think it's about 100 points a minute, which is pretty standard for you know, a single hold objective in you know, in these scenarios. And I think I capture it with like 10 minutes left in the scenario, so that yields like 1,000 points, and I think I had gathered around 500 points in casualties. So yeah, we just crossed the finish line at the end here. So here these guys are still pulling back. French troops are now advancing out of the church. And I'm realizing that my front line here may need some help, because these poor guys over here on the left are just getting shot to pieces. So what I'm going to do is bring a fresher unit up and deploy them and move this other unit that's getting shot to pieces and just get them out of the way, because today was not their day. These other units, they're still doing okay, though. These guys are ahead by 38 points now. These guys are ahead by 38 points. So as long as they're getting the best of it, I'm inclined to let them sit there and shoot it out. But that left unit, don't push them that far forward, like I did when you play the scenario. Set them up in line, kind of right by the bridge, where you'll see where I'm going to bring this next unit up. And, you know, kick a skirmisher unit out in front of them, because the main French thrust is going to come from up that road, which, as I said, I hadn't played the scenario in a long time, and I just didn't know that that's where the main French attack was, because I couldn't see them wherever it is they were deployed back there. So I didn't know where they were coming from. So yeah, these guys took 300 casualties. I mean, there is no way they had a good day. So we're just gonna pull them back, and I think I don't even use them again for the rest of the scenario. And you know, really, I shouldn't have let that happen to that degree. 300 men, that's 300 points. You know, that's a lot of points. You know, that's the difference between getting, you know, 1,500 points or, you know, 1,800 points. You know, so that was certainly a mistake. But you know, I present it here so that you will not make the same mistake. So now the cavalry is these two infantry units have formed square, and they've shot the cavalry up a little bit. Not too bad, but you know, I'm gonna double quick them out of there. No need to go fighting with the infantry when I have artillery back here, and we can always bring some more infantry up if we need to. Like I said, there's a whole regiment back there I didn't even use, you know. So we certainly were not going to be pressed for, you know, forces. Okay, so here I'm going to kick out a skirmisher group, and I'm just going to kind of place them right in front of the battalion, just to screen them. And while I think the skirmisher unit takes a few more casualties than I would like, since skirmisher units are small, they're only 100 men or so, I don't mind if they're taking some casualties. The point is they're screening the battalion, which is really doing the firing, and they're screening them from taking too many losses, which is why I kicked this skirmisher unit out in front of them, to basically screen the battalion that's already engaged in right behind them. And we're bringing this unit up, and we're going to set them up to shoot at the church. And I'm bringing another unit up because I see this infantry moving forward, kind of like they did in episode 15 too, where, you know, once you kind of engage them, they decide they want to engage you. So I'm going to move the guns up, and you know, if I can get ready in time, you know, give them a healthy greeting. And we actually end up in a melee where they end up charging one of my infantry lines, and while they're involved in the melee, I charge them with the cavalry. It's a beautiful thing to see. You'll see it when it happens. So yeah, we're gonna bring the guns up and give these two French infantry battalions that are advancing, gonna give them a nice greeting. So I realize now that I'm going to need to use this infantry unit to deal with these two French battalions that are moving forward. And I also see some of the old guard here moving out of the church. Okay, so now 14 points. We're doing a lot better. So now all my units are basically getting the best of it at this point. And this is where the French kind of collapse at this point, or very shortly it will happen. And I'm going to set my infantry unit up to the left of the artillery, and I think once the guns get set up, I'll start to bring the cavalry forward, just because you know, I see that maybe we're going to have some opportunities here. This skirmish unit's doing great. The one across the bridge there, they've shot 109 men down to this unit in front of them. They've only taken a couple of casualties. They're doing spectacular. I love skirmishers. They're just so good in this game. Alright, so now we have the church pretty well surrounded. The guns are getting set to deploy. The French are coming on. My cavalry is back here, so let's bring them up because if these French get to, if they get froggy and they really try to come on to this position here, I might really be able to put a licking on them with this cavalry. So we're going to deploy some skirmishers, see if we can slow the French advance down. They don't really do much. The French charge them, but they charge them and then stop and reform, and then we end up charging them with the cavalry. Here come the cavalry. We'll double click them to get them into position. And here come the French. And they are charging, but watch this. We recall, no invalidated target. As I said, I did this in another episode. It is cheap. When you recall a skirmisher unit, it recalls instantly, and it's basically, you're invalidating it as a target. And here, this is beautiful. Canister fire pummeling into them, a cavalry charge. This is just, I love this. So we have infantry meleeing infantry, a cavalry running down one unit, and they're also going to charge the French that are meleeing this Prussian unit, which is way bigger than this French unit. And this is good stuff. Off you go, boys. And we turn and look around, and the French have vacated the church here. Look at this. I guess we better get in here. See if we can sneak around behind this unit in the graveyard here while they're engaged with my lines in the front, and get a unit and a leader into the church here. First I have to find my leader. Nothing like the old go to me button. Oh, he's right up by the church there. Excellent. So we'll just move him up here. So we don't want to move directly into the church because then we might come too close to the infantry, the French infantry unit that's still there in the graveyard, and you don't want to get your leader killed. So first we're just going to move towards the right side of the church, so we bypass the French in the graveyard there and don't get ourselves shot, and then we'll enter the church. So we're entering the church, and there is still a little battalion of the old guard there outside the church. That was beautiful with that cavalry, though, wasn't it? That couldn't have worked out any better. They were already charging the infantry unit, so there was no forming square for them. And in we go. And I'm just double clicking them to get them in there as quickly as possible, because crossing over that fence and through the tombstones, all that stuff slows down movement. So I just want to get them in there because it's we only have about 10 minutes left in this scenario, and we need to start racking up some points here, because I think we're only around 500-600 points, and we need 1,500. So yeah, we're about 530 points here, and we need to cross the finish line with 1,500 points. So get into the church and start racking them up. There we go. There we go. So as you can see, our objective marker is now has the Allied colors, and we now have our timer. So every 59 seconds, 60 seconds, we're going to get our 100 points, and we got about 8.5 minutes to get to 1,500 points. A little bit of it we'll do with casualties, but mostly it's going to be the sorry, mostly it's going to be the objective. So now I'm just kind of resetting the stage. And I guess I do move them. My last final regiment, my real reserve here, I do bring them up behind the guns. But they never actually engage in any kind of combat at all. I just move them up there to kind of free up my my other regiments. Now I want to go attack these unit in front of the church right here, but these buggers that I ran off, they've decided they want to come back and get some more. So I'm going to deploy in line and face them. And if we can deal with them later, we'll deal with them later. But we're in the church at this point, so you know, I'm not as concerned with bringing firepower everywhere at this point. So I'm going to advance these skirmishers a little bit so that they can start. I'm not worried about church fire now at this point because I have the church. So I just want to run some of these French units off now. Now the tables have turned. You know, I'm the one in the church firing in all directions. So now it's safe for me to advance units near the church because, you know, I'm the one in there. They're not shooting at me. And I'm going to actually take this unit because there's nothing else to do with them. To maneuver them anywhere else would take too long. So I'm just going to put them in the church. And here comes this unit. Pesky buggers. Didn't the cavalry teach you guys a lesson? So we're just gonna stick a skirmisher unit out there and see if we can pick at them a little bit. And I stopped paying attention to them after that. And I think they actually charged the skirmisher unit and run the skirmisher unit off, but then the infantry line charges them and runs them off for good. Runs the French off for good. So I finally the battalion that these skirmishers were facing that they kicked the holy hell out of. I meant to select that skirmisher unit, but I didn't. I'm still selected on the wrong skirmisher unit. I realized that, and I'm just gonna reposition them. And now I click on them, and I kind of want to bring them up and see if they can get in range to shoot at the French that are there, but the French are about to run off anyway. So, yeah. Would have been cool, but no. Yeah, so they ran off this skirmisher unit, and I didn't see that, but no big deal. They wasted a charge on a skirmisher unit, and now they're getting shot at by a unit in line. And off they run. So the skirmishers did their job in terms of, you know, they sucked up the charge instead of the line unit. And when they get back there, we can just recall them. I think these French battalion over here, I think these guys have finally had enough. And everything is starting to quiet down a little bit here. All the French are running off. There's just a little battalion in front of the church there. And I'm just bringing a unit up on the other side of the church here, just to see if I can bring some fire against this unit that is. And we got 1,200 points now, so we're close. We got about 4 minutes left, so we need 300 more points. So I'm pretty sure, you know, at this point we're kind of just going to cross it. And once these skirmish units reach their retreat destination, I'll just recall them. And it looks like another French battalion is moving up to take the place of these guardsmen that are retreating. And we just racked up another 100 points there. Now we're at 1,300. We only need 200 points, but we got 3 more minutes. So, pretty sure we're going to get it. There are some more French units approaching here. You can see them, but from the top of the screen. But there's only 3 minutes left in the scenario. I have the church. I'm really just concerned with, getting the objective points now. Not, really, not really too interested in pushing forward much further. And we are at 1,400 points now, so we only need 100 more points, 1 more minute from the objective, and that'll put us over the top. So we didn't win this one by much. We could have. I could have won this scenario by. We could have gotten about 1,800 points if I hadn't let these boys right here get so shot to pieces. And that was again just because I kind of forgot. Don't move. Don't set up like this. Set up here like this from the bridge across, and then have a unit angled at the church here. That's kind of how you want to set up, and then kick a skirmisher unit right out in front of here. So you're not too close to the church, and these units that come down the road here, they're shooting at your skirmisher as opposed to shooting at your unit. So that's pretty what you want. What you want is an arc from here, kind of down to the bridge. That's kind of what you want to do with your first regiment. And then obviously while you're doing that, while that's set up and that's going, take the cavalry, run down the guns. That's, easy points. And you can probably, clear the scenario with about 1,800 points instead of, the 15 I got because, I lost 300 men I shouldn't have lost, just because I, always the eager beaver, surround the church as fast as possible. But this isn't, we don't need 2,000 points like we did in the Young Guard in episode 16. We only need 1,500, so it's not quite as essential to bum rush the fort the way it was in episode 16 because you really need to get it, kind of so soon. In this episode, you saw I captured it with 8 minutes left in the scenario, and it was still enough, even with losing the 300 men I lost that I shouldn't have lost. Still enough to get us a major victory by 4 points. Not saying it was the most impressive major victory I've ever gotten, but a major victory is a major victory, whether it's by 1 point or 10,000 points. Remember that. It doesn't matter how much you cross the finish line by. There's nothing above major victory. All you ever can get is a major victory, whether you get 1,501 points or 15,000 points. So yeah, just remember the only real mistake there I made, and as I said, it was just because I had just forgotten the scenario. There's 35 scenarios in the game, and they're all kind of just rattling around up there in my head. And this was just one that I was just drawing a blank on. I couldn't access the memory file in the back of my head there, and so I just didn't remember how it started off, and I didn't remember how it played out initially. So yeah, I moved one unit on the left there a little too far forward in my eagerness to start shooting at the church, and forgot that the French attack actually comes up that road, by the church. So you can avoid all of that just by instead setting your regiment up in that, like I said, an arc from that bridge and back behind those two little buildings in front of the church, and then swing your last regiment into that space on the right, so you're shooting at the right corner of the church, and then just kick a skirmisher unit out in front of your left battalion, and send one skirmisher unit over the bridge just to even if they send more than one unit, if just send a couple of skirmisher units over the bridge if you have to. They're just there to delay the French and stop them from pushing their way around your flank and crossing the creek. And then once you get that set up with your first regiment, with the the arc from the bridge to the corner of the church, you can then take the cavalry and go capture the guns. That's easy. That's just 3 points. Bring the guns up again, your artillery up, just because it'll come in handy if if that infantry that's up by the artillery, the two battalions of French artillery there, if they start feeling froggy and they want to come forward, they'll get blasted in the faces with canister. So yeah, I always bring the guns up, and that's pretty much it. Once you have the front of the church, you know, covered, and you clear off the artillery, then you can take your second regiment, which is also 3 battalions, and start bringing them up to cover to take on the right side of the church, and then maybe even start to swing around the rear of the church if that works out for you. Um, and then the third regiment, I don't really think you need to use them. There's just not enough room in the kind of the engagement area of where the fight is happening to really bring them to bear effectively. I brought them up behind the artillery battery at the end just to have them there if I needed them, but it's not a big enough area where you're fighting to really just have a whole Prussian brigade deployed effectively. So, as long as you set that first regiment up, they should be able to, as long as you set them up right, which is not what I did. Obviously, I got that one unit shot to hell because I set them up too far forward. But as long as you don't do that and set them up kind of by the bridge and then, arc around the church like I set up later on, um, you know, they really shouldn't need to be withdrawn or reinforced or whatever. And even getting that unit shot up the way I did, I still didn't take my last regiment and get them involved. So you have no dearth of manpower here. This is not an issue of you not having enough troops. Um, really for me, it was just remembering how the scenario went down. Uh, and really, the only mistake I made was just moving that unit too far forward at the beginning. I just, lost a lot more men out of that unit than I ever should have let happen. 300 men is 300 points. So instead of, 1,800 points that we could have had, we got, 1,500 points because I let 300 men die for no reason. So as long as you don't do that, you probably will clear the scenario with a better score than I did. And like I said, that's just because, I've played these scenarios so many times and they all eventually kind of blur into one in the back of my head. And sometimes I get them mixed up. And I kept thinking about, the episode 15, the forward 16th Brigade scenario, because it's just so similar. You're set up exactly the same way. You have the same amount of regiments with the same amount of battalions and practically the same amount of cavalrymen and an 8-gun artillery battery. I mean, other than just calling it a different brigade, the 14th instead of the 16th, it's like exactly the same setup. So I just kept getting that scenario in my head, and I hadn't played this one in forever. So, but both of these scenarios of this Plancenoit trilogy, certainly the Young Guard scenario is the hardest one, simply because you need to capture the church quickly, just because the amount of points you need for a major victory is much higher than either of the two Prussian scenarios. So even messing up as I did here, we were still able to get a major victory simply because in all three scenarios, the church is always worth the same thing. It's always worth 100 points a minute. So the real difference maker in each scenario is just how many points you need to achieve a major victory. Obviously, in the first Prussian scenario, it's only 1,000 points. So it's really easy. You don't even need to capture the objective. The second one, the Young Guard, it's 2,000 points. So not only do you need to capture the objective, but you need to capture it very quickly. In order to actually get the amount of points for a major victory. And then this scenario that we just played today is 1,500 points. So it's like you do need to get the objective, but you don't need to get it as nearly as quickly as you do in the Young Guard. So in a way, it almost, it let me mess up and stumble and make a mistake or two, and still be able to achieve a major victory with only 8 minutes left in the scenario, just because we didn't need to get as many points out of the objective as we did for the Young Guard. If I needed 2,000 points here, I'd have had to replay the scenario because there's no way. because I messed up there at the beginning. But since we only needed 1,500, uh, I could afford to stumble and make a mistake or two, and we were still able to clutch out the major victory at the end there. So yeah, all you need to take away from this is just when you set up your first regiment there, just don't move that left, the unit closest to the creek. Don't move them too far forward against the church, because that is actually where that road is where the main French thrust is going to come through. So you don't want your unit getting fired on by both the units in the church and the units that are coming up the road. And that was why my unit got so shot up, because I had them in range of the church and in range of the units on the road. So like I said, set them up further back, kind of by the bridge, kick out a skirmisher unit to screen them, and they will do much better than my unit did. That was too far forward. So all right, that's it for the Plancenoit trilogy. So there's only a couple of divisional scenarios left in the game, and they're all in Waterloo. We are definitely coming to the end of the division scenarios. I think all we have left is we have the Allied scenario, that is the defense against Marshal Ney's cavalry charge, and that's really easy. We're just gonna set up a bunch of squares and shoot artillery to pieces, because Ney was such an idiot. He sent the cavalry forward with no other type of arm, no infantry, no artillery. That he just sent the cavalry forward. Um, so all you got to do is basically form square and shoot them to pieces. So that's a pretty easy scenario. And then we also have, from the French side, then we have to play as Marshal Ney's uh, cavalry assault there, and that's a dumb scenario. I can show you guys how to win it, but there's no way I'm going to ever make that scenario look cool or interesting to play. It's just a dumb scenario. Obviously, you can't attack any squares because you're a cavalry and you can't charge squares, so you literally just run all over the map hunting artillery batteries. That's how you get points. I mean, it's so dumb. It certainly wouldn't have gone down like that in history, but in game, you have to do what you have to do to get, a major victory. And, there's three objectives that give you some points, but it's not enough to get a major victory. So you literally have to go running all over the map looking for artillery batteries to capture. You're just going around like Pac-Man gobbling up artillery batteries. It's really dumb. And then I think there's also the kind of the Dutch Nassau defense um, against the Imperial Guard attack, the final attack that we covered it in La Garde Recul, which I think that was episode 9. We covered it from a brigade perspective, and then we're going to cover it from a division perspective. In this series, in the division series. And that's not too hard either. Obviously, defending in this game is always easier than attacking. So that scenario is not too hard at all. And then the final division scenario is the end of the battle. It is called Napoleon's Finale. It is the Imperial Guard assault on Wellington's line. Not looking forward to that one, because without a doubt, the hardest divisional scenario in the game by far. Winning it is, even though I know the best way to try to win it, it's still a matter of luck, because it's just so unbalanced. The amount of forces you have compared to the amount of forces Wellington has is just extremely lopsided. So it requires a lot of luck in getting the right combat results, in hoping that Allied units fail their morale check and run and prematurely. It just requires a lot of luck. It's definitely not one I'm looking forward to doing. It's just a very lopsided scenario. Certainly the most difficult divisional scenario in the game, in my opinion. It's the most difficult scenario in the game, period, overall, in general, across brigade, division, corps, army, because it's just so lopsided in terms of the amount of forces you have at your command versus the amount of forces that you're going to be going up against. It's just very, very lopsided. And once you start getting into corps and army scenarios, um, you just don't see that as much. You don't see lopsided situations because you just have more of everything at your command and you're just able to use it more effectively instead of just getting a kind of select group of troops that are under your control and you have to basically face an entire army that's concentrated behind a ridge. It's just, yeah, so Napoleon's finale is probably, in my opinion, the most difficult scenario in the entire game because of just how lopsided it is, and for lack of a better word, unfair the situation is. So yeah, we'll probably cover that one last because that's one I want to put off until the very end. I have beaten it, more than once. I have beaten it, but it's certainly the hardest, and it does require a lot of luck to get the right combat results and the right morale results. Um, to basically make a lot of these allied units break. Um, so I think, yeah, that's it for this episode, and I'm obviously not going to let 3 weeks go by between this and the next episode. But I'm also thinking about in between episodes. I think I am going to do. I talked about it briefly last episode. Um, Start doing a guide on the grog toolbar and kind of everything you know you can do with it. And I'll break it up into four episodes. It'll be a little mini series on the grog toolbar, where we'll cover how to use it with infantry, how to use it with cavalry, with artillery, and then leaders and using different organizations at the brigade level, at the division level, corps level, and so forth. And you know, not really going to be playing any scenarios, just showing you guys how to actually use the toolbar. I know a lot of it you've probably already figured out and already know just from having watched me, um, play these scenarios. And I know I cover it kind of some of it as we're going, but I was never doing it with the intention. I was never covering it with the intention of you know covering everything that you can do with the grog toolbar. Now, I know everything that you can do with the grog toolbar, but I'm pretty sure I haven't covered everything just throughout the course of the series. So I thought it'd be better to just kind of make a series on it. And I'm not going to interrupt the main series for it. I'm just kind of do, you know, one episode of that, then one episode of the main series, one episode of that, and one episode of the main series, and just kind of stagger them so that I keep kind of moving forward with both. And like I said, that'll only be 4 episodes anyway. It'll be a little mini series. All right, so that's it for now, guys. Take it easy.